Hi guys, I'm Shmi, and today you join me in the south of France, where actually I was expecting it to be thunderstorming, but instead it's a beautiful day, and the car I'm going to be driving today is this, the new Audi RS5 Coupe. Now the big thing about this car is the new engine. It has a 2.9 litre twin-turbocharged V6 instead of that naturally aspirated 4.2 litre V8 that was in the previous generation. It still generates 450 horsepower, but what does that mean for the car and what's it going to be like? So we're going to take a look around it, go into quite a lot of detail about the car, about the updates to the model, about the specific features to the RS5, some of the optional specification, obviously take it out for a drive on my way over today towards Andorra, where I've got some pretty nice roads in front of me. But first, let's take a little walk around and check out the new RS5. So this particular car, finished in Navarra blue. It has the sort of default silver trim package that you can see around the window, the door mirrors, around the front, around the grille, and also at the rear, with the silver wheels, which set nicely against the dark colour of the paintwork, which is glowing beautifully in the sunshine today. Now, Audi released this car actually in Sonoma green. They went with a green launch colour, which is quite bold, sets quite a statement. So it's been developed by Audi Sport on top of obviously the Audi A5. The RS5, the top model, has that 450 horsepower twin turbo V6 up front, 600 Newton meters, a red line at 6,700 RPM. But one of the sort of distinct things about the new look is, well, this sort of introduces new RS styling. So in particular, the front grille. If you compared this to the regular A5 grille, it is wider in terms of the new bumpers. It is also slightly narrower because it's lifted up at the bottom to give this extra cooling in through the lower section. Now this car, the RS5, has a number of design styling cues, aerodynamic features, like you can see here with these inlets down at the bottom, and also alongside the light, which are inspired by the 90s Quattro IMSA GTO. So that's kind of cool to bring that through. And it's a bit wider than the standard car. It's 15 millimeters at each corner, so 3 centimeters wider overall for the car. It comes as standard with a very high spec. The S5 and the RS5 both get Audi's LED lighting standard. This RS5 is spec'd very, very high indeed. We've got Audi Drive Select, obviously, but the Audi Drive control for the suspension, which we'll talk more about when we're driving. Coming around to the rear, see at the back, we've still got the very distinctive large oval tailpipes, which are a distinct feature of Audi RS models, having the split inside and those sort of large tailpipes for the finish. But it's very, very smart. You can see sort of outlets mirroring the inlets at the front there by the lights, and also down at the bottom. And obviously those also help with airflow around the side of the car, directing it and bringing it through, and this lip spoiler for a little bit of downforce, because the top speed in here, 270 kilometers per hour. That's 174 miles per hour. But what is also quite cool is the way it gets 0 to 62 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour in 3.9 seconds. So the RS5 has become pretty quick. It's done away with the 7-speed S-tronic double clutch, and it now has the sort of ever popular 8-speed ZF automatic, which is a gearbox that just works so well. So it's no surprise that they'd make that to the V6 engine to make this car, or give it its go. This car has the standard brakes. You can also have it with ceramics. But as you can see on the outside, it's quite butch and aggressive, the way those sort of curves work over the bonnet with the lines that go down it. Has quite a lot of presence. The silver sort of highlights making it distinct. The Quattro lettering, of course, reminding us that it's a four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive car. Audi sticking with that system, giving the car more stability and security, more grip, more traction off the line, and a number of other sort of benefits. As we're seeing from other manufacturers, the Mercedes-AMG E63 has moved towards an all-wheel drive system. The BMW M5, new generation's moving towards an all-wheel drive system. So there are clearly benefits to that, and Audi have stuck with their guns, stuck with the system, and going with Quattro again, as always, on the RS5. Now I want to come around towards the front and show you the engine under the bonnet, so we'll just come in here quickly. We'll come back to the interior in a moment to go over that in more detail, but let's come around and take a glance at this. It's a very heavy bonnet, even though the whole car is actually 60 kilos lighter than the previous generation. So there we go. It's a nice sort of carbon finish to the panel on the top with the sort of red highlights as well. You can never often see that much back here, but that's the power plant. You can see down here with all sort of heat shielding and cooling. It's rather efficient as these things go, 197 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is an impressive performance stat as well, or number. Let's drop that down. click it into place. And the way these sort of lights point down towards the grille, it's quite a sharp, nice styling cue. But let's head round to the inside to check this out in a little bit more detail. So in here, a couple of things. This car is obviously spec'd very nicely, but you've got these very supportive seats with this distinct quilting pattern. This colour goes really well mixed with the black of the leather around the steering wheel, the Alcantara here on the door panel as well. We'll come back around all the buttons and switches later on, but just to sort of jump in and show you the main highlights. And the first thing is the big digital display that sits in front of us. The start-stop button is down here. Fire it into life with a little bit of a burble and a crackle. Now let me pull the door closed so we've got no messages, but you can see the screen has come to life. The default view we've got open at the moment with the large central rev counter, but this is a fantastic display and I'll go through more of it later on. But you have a view button right here where you can change the basic settings and have a full screen map if that's what you prefer, or all of your different sort of trip info or your music or whatever you'd like the system to show, which is quite nice. And you'll see at the moment in the center here we're in individual mode, the configurable Audi Drive Select. So you have a couple of different settings and that controls all sorts of things. But one thing I'm going to do is pop the window down. So I think at the moment the exhaust valve is closed, meaning it's the sort of quietest version that you can have this set up in. And then if you'd like to change that, you can either press this hotkey right here or the Drive Select control panel down here. And when you press that button, it will show you the different modes here. You can configure them yourself, but you can hear the exhaust valve getting louder already. Let's just hear this now in loud mode. There's that nice kind of burble to it. Maybe criticisable because it's a little bit artificial, but it does sound quite fruity, and I'll show you more of this obviously while driving and what the car sounds like. But it's all well sort of laid out, lots of accessible buttons and controls, comfortable seating position, generally sort of smart cabin interior. And we'll come back, like I said, and go through all of this in a lot more detail and show you everything there is to see through this system and through the central system. So we'll come back to that one in a little bit. But for now, I think it is time to take this car for a drive, see what the new RS5 is like out on the road. So let's head over towards Andorra and find some nice roads to drive this car on. Now, the great part about where I'm currently driving is how good the roads are, and it's only going to get better as we get close towards Andorra. So far I've driven about 150 kilometers on the French autoroutes, getting familiar with the car, experiencing it in that environment, and obviously now I'm driving with everything in full automatic. So the gearbox in automatic, the Drive Select in auto, which means things like Audi's dynamic ride control, the dynamic steering, the throttle response, the exhaust sound, everything is fully deciding as we go. And going uphill, of course, that means right now I'd have to push my foot down a bit harder to get the throttle response or the pedal to kick down the gearbox. But when you do, it gets quite exciting. So on the motorway, I was driving in comfort mode to experience that a little bit more. And I'm just going to spare a moment to just check out this view. This road is meandering backwards and forwards across a stream up a valley. It is going to be amazing up in front of me. But on the motorway in comfort mode, there's a lot of sort of wiggle room in the steering wheel. And then I found the car kind of veers off a little bit, and you've got to sort of tug it back, and it takes quite a lot of force almost to do so. It's a strange sensation, but it is obviously incredibly variable, and you can configure so much. And right now on this kind of road, we should be putting it first into dynamic. So simple little change. Hear it getting a little bit noisier straight away. It also gets noticeably firmer. The ride is very firm if you have it in dynamic mode. I don't know how much of that comes across on camera, but it feels rather bumpy. But the exhaust is nice, and it reminds me a little bit of my old S5 Cabriolet. So I had the previous generation of S5 Cabriolet, which had the supercharged V6, but obviously quite a similar exhaust noise, the tone of it. But let's manually blip the paddles a bit, where you get some of those overruns, sort of burbles, crackles, and put my foot down and feel it sort of pulling away. And the car has quite a lot of power, 600 Newton meters of torque, and that's what you feel the most. It's a very torquey kind of feel up towards the top. You get max horsepower from 5,700 to 6,700, so up towards the top end of the rev range as well. It turns in feeling probably a little bit heavier than it is, but you can get back on the power reassuringly early, which is the nice thing obviously about the all-wheel drive systems, and turn it in. But I feel slightly disconnected from steering, and perhaps that's because it's set up to be a little bit too kind of everyday driver, and that was very much the pitch with this car, making it something that can be a little bit more towards everyday usability than, say, BMW's M4 or Mercedes-AMG's C63 or the C63S. But the noise is a tough one, because that V8 in the previous generation was so good, but everybody is obviously going the way of downsizing for efficiency, for sort of reasons put on them by governments, legislation, things the economy dictates and they can't control. BMW obviously had the V8 in the E92 M3, that went down to the straight 6 in the M4, this has gone back to the V6. Audi have used all sorts of different engines in the various generations of their different RS models. Obviously the 5-cylinder engine in the TTRS and the RS3 is brilliant, a lot of fun, and this has a lot of those characteristics. It's playful, it has those overrun, albeit slightly artificial burbles, but they make it kind of a little bit more exciting to drive. And through the Audi Drive Select you can actually configure just about everything. So driving along like this, it's comfortable, the seats are great, seats are really good. On the motorway, completely chilled, you've got lane guide assist, blind spot monitoring, everything you can imagine. Up to the red line, it will auto shift as well up at the red line, which is, I guess, saves you from running straight into the top end of it if you don't want to. But this is nice, where I am right now, just meandering backwards and forwards. Really cool bit of road. And in a moment I'm going to put it into individual. Oh, nice. I love these kind of roads where it just weaves and meanders backwards and forwards, because I've got individual set up to be slightly softer on the suspension, which, like I say, is at the firm end, and I probably want that in auto. But we come to a village, which gives us an opportunity to put it back into automatic, gearbox, and just chill for a moment and ride in the car and think about it. You've got that great display, that digital display in front of you is brilliant for just seeing everything and I guess all the information. And one thing I didn't like in the R8 when I drove the R8 Spider is that you don't then have a central display, whereas in here you do. So your passengers aren't feeling neglected and like they've got no access to any information, which is something that I don't really like. In front of me I've got a number of different sort of bits of information. I've got my speed and my gear and whether I'm in sport or not. I've got the oil temperature and I've got a lap timer on the head-up display, which is really quite cool as well. Mirrors are tiny. It's kind of odd, the mirror visibility is not the best in the world, I'm not going to lie. You can't see a huge amount towards the edges of them, but they do look cool. Price you pay, I suppose, and they've got obviously the blind spot monitoring just on the inside of those. General visibility in the car is quite good. The C-pillars at the back aren't too obscuring to the visibility, and you can see a bit at the front of the bonnet, so you can sort of see where that's going as well. But we're out of the town speed limits, so let's go back into manual, and in a moment I'm going to put my foot down and experience 450 horsepower of RS5, and away we go. Yeah, okay, so it's definitely quick enough. If you were ever questioning that it might not be, well, top speed 174 miles an hour, and getting there like that, it's enough, don't worry about that. And now actually the road opens out onto motorway, so this is where we can put the Drive Select using this toggle back into comfort mode and relax a little bit and see what it's like here before we get to some more twisty roads up ahead of me. So you've got the lane control, so if you start drifting you can take your hands off the wheel and it can sort of slightly point you, but I don't find it as precise as you might like it to be. The blind spot monitoring obviously does the job, adaptive cruise control, all of these kind of bits of functionality that I guess are becoming a little bit more standard as they move down the generations. Things that might have been standard in the A7, now in the A5 and the A4, but this is, well, the A5, the previous generation RS5 was the first RS5, and this is obviously only the second, so it's a fairly new one in Audi's line, but I think it's cool touches that they've sort of incorporated things from the past into them. But just riding along normally, it's super quiet, like there's no exhaust noise intrusion, there's barely any road noise as well, versus sort of other cars of the class, we could say, and everything feels really nice, and that's what Audis have done so well in recent years. Everything you touch is nice. The way you close the doors and the boot, they just feel kind of reassuring in a way that you often don't get at this sort of price point. But driving this on these roads so far is not bad at all. I'm going to go up ahead, have another sort of look around the car maybe, and then find some even twistier bits of roads to enjoy. I've just driven across the border into Andorra, and I was going to jump out and show you the view, but it is so windy that it's even hard to hold the camera in my hand just to give you some kind of sense of that. But you can kind of just about see where I am right now. This location is awesome, and there are some more sort of rocky mountains back there behind us, but it's a great drive. This road meandering up the hill beside me is pretty spectacular as well, and you probably just heard the seatbelt mechanism doing its thing. Let's just, oh, there's some of the wind. You can see how that works. Grabs the seatbelt, brings it forwards to you. That's becoming kind of standard on these coupes. Gives you slightly sort of more room for a longer door, which makes getting in and out easier. But yeah, so far so good. Having a lot of fun driving in the RS5 today. Now what I'm going to do is head up this road and hopefully enjoy it an awful lot before giving you my full sort of interior rundown tour. But another country, second country of the day, France to Andorra, and some pretty amazing roads to be driving on. And over the top, 2,400 meters. But one cool thing that I hadn't really taken in earlier, which is if you get up towards the red line, you get sort of 5 stages of warning before a flashing rev counter to obviously notify you to shift up. And you've also got 5 little lights on the head-up display as well, but you only get that when you're in dynamic mode. But dynamic mode on a road like this, where the tarmac's quite smooth, you can turn it in. You do get a slight sense of understeer when you really push hard, when you sort of accelerate too early out of a corner. I like that flash though, that's really cool. So you have these hairpins down the road. You don't get the flashes and the rev counter upshifts in first gear. That's an interesting sort of thing to note. But it also feels like it can cling on quite tightly. And I've noticed as well in dynamic that when you hit the red line, it won't automatically upshift if you're in dynamic mode. So you can configure this and literally have it how you want it. But going through these corners, you've got a lot of sort of sense of security and grip and control. You know, first gear, quite hard downhill there, but it won't let you sort of push it too far and be stupid. The view here is just mega, the way it meanders down the valley, hairpin after hairpin. And I'm getting a bit more feel for the car, turning it in, feeling a little bit of the understeer on exit, but it does give you a sense of sort of reassurance on the entry to the corner. It works kind of both ways on that front. But coming down here, listening to the noise of the burbles on the downshifts, just enjoying the car. It's very much at the sort of performance Grand Tourer end. It's comfortable and relaxed and quite refined. It's not necessarily shouty and boisterous. So you can see what that sort of positioning I mentioned earlier is a little bit like, where the car is sort of aimed and what position it fills. We're going to continue on towards, I think, a hotel stop where I'm going to sort of take another look around. Let's take a proper look around then, and I know I've talked about that quite a lot during this video, but there's a lot to show you inside this car. And if I spin the camera around, we will start off with the digital driver dashboard. That whole display and all the different things you can see on it. So the navigation's just jumped a little bit, but that is right where we are in the mountains, as you can see by the twisty roads. If you scroll left and right, you go through your trip information, where you can scroll down and you've got different displays in there. If you go to the right, you've got your music, the preloaded songs in here, notes if you've got your phone connected or other sort of mobile phone applications, and then back to the nav, and then it loops around back to the trip screen. If you press view, obviously that all goes full screen. You've got all the same trip information available in the middle, but you can also see the boost chart, the oil temperature, and various, other bits and pieces. Now in this view, I do actually feel like the rev counter and the speedometer are really quite small, which makes them a little bit awkward to see. But the digital display sort of overall is the most magnificent thing ever in a nutshell. It is so good. On the steering wheel, that was all done through those buttons. On this side, you've got your phone, navigation, your drive select, and your next track, last track, and volume. So that's all pretty helpful as well. Stalks as usual, cruise control, adaptive cruise control available down here. Set your distance, also got a limiter function too. Over to the left, your lights and fog lights and sensors and the like, head-up display height, and instrument brightness. Your memory seats, your mirror controls, folding and heated down there as well if you swizzle it all the way around. And if I open the door just to show you down here, RS5 door sill black, and then down here the seat controls, various movements, lumbar and massaging functions. So if I press this one, if I close the door, I think on the central screen actually, if we go back to the menu, you would see, there we go, the different massaging functions you can have, wave, and yeah, going through them, and that's all quite fun. So you can choose all these different bits and what they do, which is kind of crazy as I'm feeling it in my back. But we'll leave that for the moment. This display generally quite bright, clear, easy to see. Down there, some fairly nice large pedals. You're not going to miss that brake pedal. And coming through to the middle, the vents all the way through this sort of central part, which means you can cool the cabin very quickly and easily. This car, I noticed, Bang & Olufsen sound system. You can see that down there. Lots of speakers, very neatly hidden away, sort of on the back of the dashboard, not in your face. Down here next to the start-stop, you've got the 12-volt socket, your drive select buttons, auto start-stop, and various different controls, turn off the display. And then here, you can have the parking assistance, which is kind of cool. You can choose the different kind of modes and how you want the car to park you. If I press that again, there we go. You can change the camera view as well. There we go, 360 cameras. I hadn't even realised at this point that we had all of these options. So this car is very nicely loaded up with spec, as you can see. Back in the parking mode. Anyway, I'll pop it back into park, which is done with one press of that button. To go into reverse or drive, you press the button on the end here, which is kind of a clicky, it's a bit strange. Down into drive, and then when you're driving, one more down and it will go into sport, or right into manual, back to drive. All of that quite familiar. Manual handbrake, electric handbrake, and automatic on it, should you prefer. This slot for putting the key in, quite neat and tidy, and then your volume and speaker controls here. In the center console, you've got the pad for touching your phone on and charging it up. You've got a couple of USBs, general decent storage. The armrest has this kind of latching thing where if you just lift it up a bit, that's where it will then control itself, or all the way up if you want to put it back down. And in the back, pretty decent space, to be honest. Your rear passengers with the front seats in a nice position have enough space. You can see the center sort of storage bucket in the middle, and then the folding down armrest with a sort of through loading system too, but the same nice materials in the back, the nice leather finish, and the quilting on the seats. And I'm just going to point out the RS logo here on the front seats as well. So interior sort of fit and finish is very nice. Really, really good actually. Lots of sort of familiarities across the range. I mean, the screen and the sort of general setup, but this car doing it in all-round pretty nice way. And I haven't actually talked about this, which is again a nice screen. The displays on the air conditioning control here, auto on and off. It's all just really quite nice, and you can set this to go through the different modes, close the additional vent if it's annoying you. I'm just playing around as I go here really. Put auto back on. Heated seats, heated windows, or all off if you prefer, but in this heat we don't. So let me shut off the car and hop out. Okay, so not too windy here. Fortunately, we are sheltered slightly. But back on the outside, the car has a lot of presence to it. That sort of nice ridgeline that runs all the way down past that RS5 decorative part right there, all the way down towards the rear, where you can see the sort of emphasis on the slightly wider body. Back here looks nice. Not 100% sure on the wheels. They seem a little bit fussy for me in terms of the design and the way this shape works. I like the 5 twin spoke, but those somewhere in the middle, undecided on them. The car in general, now that the sun is out, looks very nice. Slightly bug splattered, of course, from my drive this morning, doing 200 or so odd kilometers on it. As I can just point out actually some of the other colors coming in. So the launch color green, and the car was launched in that color. And a grey car that's over there too. Back to the blue just for the moment. So something I like, as I mentioned earlier, is just the way the things you sort of touch. The door opens and closes with a nice feel. The same for the boot, the way it kind of closes back down. Oh, and just quickly, you can see my luggage and my cameras, but there's a lot of space back here, no shortage. This closes back down with a nice sort of soft feel to it. So what else can you have? Well, you can have a carbon pack on the car, and if you have that, you'd have this piece in carbon. You would have those side sort of black parts in carbon that you don't necessarily see so much on the blue car. Door mirrors in carbon, mirror caps, and this part around the front in carbon, as well as the grille surround in carbon. You can also have a black pack, which gives you sort of certain parts of the car in black, like this piece down here, the grille. You can have a carbon roof option. So there's lots of sort of ability to customize the car and add carbon parts on, should you wish. But I think this is pretty much going to wrap up my video, taking a look in quite some detail at the new Audi RS5. It's been quite a lot of fun, the roads here, some amazing roads to be enjoying and experiencing the car on. And kind of from my point of view, I can see that it's very much more this sort of GT, more GT than perhaps some of the competitors. There's a sports car element to it, but it's quietened down, even though the performance is still very much there. The pace is there, the speed is there, there's no question about that. And it's still quite a fun car to drive, and quite a sort of convenient car in terms of the functionality, the technological features, what it has inside, and yeah, everything from that point of view. So an enjoyable drive overall. Car, very, very sort of well, I guess, packaged. It comes out as a nice all-around proposition, a car that you can use all the time, every day. That is what it's for. It's a performance GT for daily usage, for daily driving, for feeling comfortable with, for taking four in if you want, for taking luggage in the boot, for driving to the shops, or for enjoying on a road trip and some nice twisty roads like today. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. But that is it for now. I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers.